ॐ भूर्भुवः स्वः तत्सवितुर्वरेण्यं भर्गो देवस्य धीमहि धियो यो नः प्रचोदयात् ॐ शांति शांति शांति. Namaskar my dear friends, this is video number 8 on Katha Upanishad. This video starts with chapter number 3 verse number 12. That self hidden in all beings does not shine forth, but it is seen by subtle seers through their one-pointed and subtle intellects. Hidden Vedantists give the illustration of the sun, which, though a fiery orb and many times larger than the earth, can be hidden by a patch of cloud, its effulgence even then remaining undimmed. All beings, the same divine self or pure consciousness dwells in all beings. It is the body created by ignorance that accounts for the diversity beheld in the universe. Does not, etc. The self is unknown to the impure mind. That is why an ignorant person identifies himself with the body, the senses, and other material objects. Subtle seers, those who are capable of seeing the different degrees of subtlety in the various material objects described in the two preceding verses and of distinguishing them from Atma, which is the subtlest of all. One-pointed. The mind becomes one-pointed through the practice of concentration and self-control. Subtle intellects. The intellect becomes capable of subtle spiritual perception by means of constant meditation on the identity of Brahma and Atma. Every living being is in reality the Supreme Brahma, but in spite of man's being so instructed, he does not grasp the truth that he is the Supreme Self. On the contrary, without any instruction, whatever he says to himself, I am the son of such and such a person, and mistakes for Atma the aggregate of the body, the senses, and the mind, which is really non-self and is perceived as an object by the self like any other object, such as a pot or a jar. Alas, how deep, unfathomable, and inscrutable is this divine Maya, veiled by my Maya, born of the gunas. I am not revealed to all. This deluded world knows me not as the unborn and eternal. The method of absorption into Brahma is the reverse of process of manifestation. Verse 13. The wise man should merge his speech in his mind and his mind in his intellect. He should merge his intellect in the cosmic mind and the cosmic mind in the tranquil self. Should merge, etc. The reference is to the practice of yoga. The activities of the senses should be stopped and the attention directed to the mind. Then the mind should be drawn into the buddhi or discriminative faculty. Next, the aspirant should sink the buddhi into the cosmic mind or hiranyagarbha. In other words, he should make his mind as pure as the cosmic mind, which is free from all notions of discrete individuality. Last, the then veil of the cosmic mind should be rent and the seeker should merge in the absolute, which is calm because of an utter absence of any distinction or difference either with regard to others or within itself. Speech stands for all the sense organs. Intellect. The buddhi reflects the radiance of Atma more than does the mind or manas. Merge his intellect, etc. The intellect is the upadhi or limiting adjunct of the jiva or individual soul, that is to say, Atma. When conditioned by the buddhi, appears as the individual soul. In this stage of discipline, the soul loses its individuality in the cosmic soul and becomes one with it. Hiranyagarbha is associated with the upadhi of the cosmic body and mind. Tranquil self, the unchanging and inmost self of all, which is free from attributes and is the unaltered witness of the changes that take place in the body and the mind. Like a beneficent mother, the Upanishad exhorts all to cultivate self-knowledge because that alone leads to a peace and blessedness. Verse number 14. Arise, awake, approach the great and learn. Like the sharp edge of a razor is that path, so the wise say hard to tread and difficult to cross. Arise, that is to say, from the sleep of ignorance which conjures up dreams of worldly objects and is the seedbed of all misery. The great illumined teachers learn the knowledge of one's identity with Brahman. That path, the path of knowledge and discrimination which leads to Brahman. A confused traveler in the desert sees a mirage and runs towards the water in the vain expectation of quenching his thirst. A man in darkness mistakes a rope for a snake and travels with ill-grounded fear. But when the true nature of the desert and rope is revealed by a wise person, those who were deluded no longer suffer from false expectations and fears. They regain peace of mind. Likewise, a deluded man who associates Atma with name, form, and action, and through ignorance regards it as the doer, the instrument, and the enjoyer of the fruits of action, subjects himself to false expectations and false fear and experiences endless miseries. But when, through the instruction of an illumined perceptor, he attains the knowledge of the self, he becomes free from ignorance, realizes the illusory nature of multiple objects, and enjoys peace. The path to self knowledge is extremely difficult. The aspirant is asked to practice the discipline of discrimination following the instruction of a teacher. The subtle nature of the goal. Verse 15. Having realized Atma, which is soundless, intangible, formless, undecaying, and likewise tasteless, eternal, and odorless, having realized that which is without beginning and end, beyond the great and unchanging, one is freed from the jaws of death. Soundless, etc. The attributes of sound, touch, form, taste, and smell are related to the senses. They are properties of matter, but Atma, being pure consciousness, is totally different from matter and therefore devoid of material attributes. Without beginning, that which is produced from a cause has a beginning and therefore is not eternal. Atma transcends causality and is the ultimate ground of everything. It is the all-pervading essence of everything, hence it is beginningless. Great, the cosmic mind It too is subject to change, freed, etc. That is to say, he attains immortality. The knowledge of Atma is immortality. The knower becomes Atma. Ignorance of Atma is death. For ignorance produces desire and desire impels one to action. A man is born again and again in the relative world to reap the fruit of his action. He goes through the round of births and deaths as long as he cherishes, desires, performs actions, and longs for their results. He continues to do so as long as he remains ignorant of his true nature. But when he realizes himself to be the infinite Atma, the embodiment of peace and blessedness, he then becomes free from ignorance, desire, and action, and is emancipated from death. The Upanishad extols the knowledge discussed in the present chapter. Verse number 16. The wise man who has heard and related the eternal story of Naciketas told by death is adored in the world of Brahma, related to qualified pupils, heard from a competent preceptor. Eternal story. It is so because the Vedas are eternal. The Upanishad forms a part of the Vedas. Adored, etc. That is to say, he becomes endowed with the infinite glories of Brahma. It is a custom of the Vedic seers to end their teaching by extolling the result in order to draw the pupil's attention to them. Verse number 17. And he who practicing self-control recites the supreme secret in an assembly of Brahmins or at a Shraddha ceremony obtains thereby infinite rewards. Yeah, he obtains infinite rewards. Recites, that is to say, recites the text and also explains its meaning. Supreme secret. The story deals with Atma, which remains a profound secret for unillumined. Shraddha, the after death ceremony of the Hindus, in which food and drink are offered for the gratification of departed souls. It is quite appropriate that the Katha Upanishad, describing the immortality and divinity of soul, should be recited and explained on an occasion of this kind. Here ends chapter 3 of part 1 of the Katha Upanishad. Part 2 of Katha Upanishad, chapter 1. Yama said, the self-existent Supreme Lord inflicted an injury upon the sense organs in creating them with outgoing tendencies. Therefore, a man perceives only outer objects with them and not the inner self, but a calm person wishing for immortality beholds the inner self with his eyes closed. The self-existent, etc. The Lord who is one and without a second is always independent of everything. He is not accountable to anyone for his actions. Inflicted, etc. The experience of outer objects and not the inmost self by the sense organs is kind of injury done to them by the Lord himself when he created them and turned them outward. The word in the text may also mean killed as long as the sense organs experience outer objects, they are deprived of the knowledge of the Lord. This may be regarded as a kind of death for them. People with worldly desires do not even seek the knowledge of the Lord and thus fall victims to ever recurring death. Immortality, deathlessness, or eternity is the very nature of Atma, inner self. Etymologically, the word Atma means the inner spirit which pervades and absorbs all, which experiences all, and whose reality remains unbroken forever, with his eyes, etc. That is to say, by turning away the senses from other objects, the eyes here represent all the sense organs. It is not possible for a man to experience at the same time both the external world and the inmost self. The discipline of self control by which he realizes the inmost self may be compared to the turning back of the downward course of a swift river. It has been stated in the previous section that the self hidden in all beings does not manifest itself and is seen only through the one pointed mind of an illumined seer. What is the obstacle to self knowledge? If the nature and the cause of the obstacle are known, one can then try to remove it. The natural tendency of man to dwell on external objects which are other than the self is an obstacle in the path of self-realization. This is called avidya or ignorance. Another obstacle caused by ignorance of the self is the longing to enjoy material pleasures here on earth and in heaven after death. Ignorance and desires are then the two chief obstacles to self knowledge. Verse 2 of Chapter 1 of Part 2 of Katha Upanishad. Children pursue outer pleasures and fall into the net of widespread death, but calm souls, having known what is unshakable immortality, do not covet any uncertain thing in this world. Children, that is to say, man with undeveloped intellect, clouded vision, and a craving for material pleasures. Net, which entangles ignorant souls in its masses of repeated births and makes them victims of sickness, old age, and death. Widespread death. No one identified with the body can ever escape death. It is the certain end of all creatures who live under the spell of ignorance, cherishing selfish desires and working only for the fulfillment of these desires. Immortality, uninterrupted awareness of the inmost self which remains unaffected by the law of karma. The self does not expand by good action, nor does it contract by evil action. The self knowledge alone is secure and unchangeable immortality. The relative immortality enjoyed by the gods comes to an end in course of time. Do not covet, that is to say, they do not seek immortality in the perishable universe through progeny, wealth, or life in heaven. They renounce all desire for these transitory things. The knowledge of the self alone makes one immortal. An illumined person, even though enjoying the longest life on earth, remains a victim of death. How can one realize that knowing which the wise do not covet any worldly object? So I conclude this video here. Next video will start with verse number 3 of chapter 1 and part 2 of Katha Upanishad. Thank you for watching this video. Please like, comment and share the video and subscribe the channel. Namaskar, my dear friends.